This is taken so for granted that, for example, if you Google Allah, Google AI would just spit this out. Reflection. This is what Google AI teaches us about the God of Islam. It says in Islamic theology, Allah is considered immaterial and incorporeal, meaning he is not composed of matter and does not have a physical body. This concept is central to the belief in God's unique and transcendent nature, distinct from anything created. Islam strictly rejects anthropomorphic descriptions of Allah, anthropomorphic, in the form of a man. Islam, Google AI. How you going to argue? Google AI. Islam strictly rejects anthropomorphic descriptions of Allah, which would portray him as having human-like physical attributes. Islam rejects such. This is because any physical form would limit his divine nature. This is what is spat out. You Google Allah. Your first introduction to Islam and its God. But you should know, family, that this is not Islam. It is Arabized Greek philosophy masquerading as Islam. To my Orthodox Muslim family, with due respect, your prophet is not Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, because you don't worship the God of Prophet Muhammad. Your true prophets are the Greek philosophers, Xenophanes and Aristotle and Plato, because you worship the God that they hammered out over the centuries. The Prophet Muhammad said 3 generations after him will no longer be of him. Following the 3rd generation after the Prophet Muhammad's death, Muslims began to have mental and spiritual intercourse with both Greek tradition and Persian Sasanian tradition. These Muslims traded the God of the prophets for the God of the philosophers. We, the Nation of Islam, are right now successfully engaging in the process of impeaching this common understanding of the God of Islam and shifting the paradigm. Allow me to bring to the witness stand Dr. Nikolai Sinai, a German scholar of Quranic studies. He is a professor of Islamic studies at the University of Oxford, as well as a fellow of Pembroke College in the British Academy. Why do I bring Dr. Sinai to the witness stand here today? Because in 2023, Princeton University published his book, Key Terms of the Quran, a critical dictionary. This book from this renowned scholar of the Quran and Islamic studies has become in the academy a textbook of sorts. But there's controversy associated with Dr. Sinai's book. The reason for the controversy, even though his work is established and it's textbook now in the field, but there's controversy. Many were taken aback and aghast even. Both Muslim scholars and Western scholars together were taken aback by his entry of Allah in this critical dictionary. He didn't get his definition from Google AI. There's controversy around his book and his description of Allah in the Quran because he broke ranks with the historic tradition of Islamic studies from both Muslim scholars and the West. He says in this textbook of Quranic terms, let's read some excerpts and I'm going to unpack it. We're almost done. Dr. Sinai says, the Quran does not conceive of God as immaterial. See, all of these years, it has been theological prejudices that have been imposed on the Quran. Yes, sir. Theological prejudices informed by the principles of Greek philosophy. And so, for the last 1,000 years, many of us, because the Islam was successfully, fully hijacked. Old Islam was successfully, fully hijacked by the 12th and 13th century. Yes, sir. From then on, it was non-Arabs who were the leading readers and interpreters of the Quran. And they gave us how we should read this book. And we have come up in this tradition and have taken these readings for granted. We never interrogated them. The West has followed the Muslim tradition in this regard. This is why it's Google AI. Google AI didn't go confer with no sheikh or imam to get this definition, but Google AI agrees with the average sheikh or imam had they consulted one. But Western tradition of Islamic studies, for the most part, in the last 70 years has followed suit and has propagated the same presuppositions about Islam in this book in particular. So here comes Dr. Sinai, who's breaking ranks with that tradition. He's re-examined the text itself without being beholden to the interpretive grid that has been used to interpret it up to this point. And this is the conclusions that he came to. There are a number of reasons why I think it's important to lift Dr. Sinai's words to us today. Remember, I said we, the Nation of Islam, are right now successfully engaging in the shifting of the paradigm. Yes, right. Dr. Sinai says, The Quran does not conceive of God as immaterial. The Quran recurrently ascribes to God a face, hands, and eyes. Although some of the relevant formulations are clearly idiomatic, metaphorical, they cannot be reduced to mere metaphor. Rather, they serve to articulate essential aspects of divine personhood. The Quranic tendency to stress God's singular grandeur and to set him apart from all other beings and from the cosmos at large, this finds its most explicit expression in the statement of Quran 42:11, Laysa kamithlihi shay'un. There is nothing like him, nothing like God. This is the key verse that Sunni Muslims would bludgeon us in the Nation of Islam with, as proof that we are in error. We are guilty of shirk when we say Allah is a man, because the Quran clearly says, Laysa kamithlihi shay'un. There is none like him. Right. So they tell us that this clearly proves that God is not a man. Okay. Together with the assertion that the eyes do not attain him, but he attains the eyes, Quran 6:103. Dr. Sinai says these two verses seemingly absolutely exclude any similarity between God and other things. And this can only or can easily invite Platonizing construes. Plato. Platonizing construes of the Quran's deity as being ontologically different from his creatures and dwelling in a domain of being that is separate from that of material objects, making God intrinsically invisible and immaterial. What Dr. Sinai is saying, while he starts with the God of the Quran is not immaterial, he concedes that these two verses, there is none like him, and the eyes don't attain to him, God, that these two verses seem to, he says, invite a philosophic reading of the God of Islam. These two readings seem to invite the thought that the God of the Quran is ontologically distinct from his creatures, that he dwells in a domain of being that is separate from material objects. And therefore, these two verses seemingly suggest that God is intrinsically invisible and immaterial. However, he says, from an inner Quranic perspective, it is unwarranted to understand God as immaterial and invisible. The Quran has no vocabulary to articulate a Platonic bifurcation of reality into two spheres. Plato separated the ideal from the material, the spiritual from the material, that these were totally not just separate, but incompatible with each other. That's Plato's reality. He says the Quran has no vocabulary to articulate such a Platonic bifurcation of reality into two spheres, a material and a corporeal. He says the Quran considers God to be at least in principle visible and to be spatially located. insofar as the properties of being visible and being spatially located do seem to be common to both God and his creatures. The Quranic portrayal of God is indeed that of an embodied being, as persuasively argued by W. Wesley Williams. Who is this fella? The Quran, as persuasively argued by W. Wesley Williams, the Quran does not depict God as being inherently invisible, but rather illustrates the overpowering and potentially lethal nature of an unmitigated theophany. A theophany is when God himself appears physically to his servants. This W. Wesley Williams fella persuasively showed that in the scriptures, it is not that God is invisible, it's that if God appears to his mortal creatures in his full glory, they could die. It's his luminous fiery glory. It's dangerous for fallible humanity. So he just don't manifest himself to the people. He didn't for 6,000 years, lest he would kill them. That's what is being said here. The Quran, Dr. Sinai says, visualizes its embodied deity. The God of this book is embodied. The Quran visualizes its embodied deity as luminous. God is light, the Quran says. As luminous, a notion that has a long ancient Near Eastern, including biblical pedigree. And then Dr. Sinai quotes again Williams, 2008, page 8990. Williams, 2009, page 38, 39. That's the source he's citing for his conclusion. Apart from hinting at God's luminosity, the Quran portrays God as humanoid. The Quranic God, therefore, is not merely a body, but also, at least in some sense, an anthropomorphic body. The God of this book, his entry in the critical dictionary of Quranic terms, his entry on Allah declares that the God, the Allah of this book, has an anthropomorphic body. Thus, the Quran stands in a tradition that has been appropriately called transcendent anthropomorphism. And who called it transcendent anthropomorphism? This Williams fellow. The entry on Allah in Dr. Sinai's book is around 10 pages long. It created a lot of controversy because, as you see, he has totally broken ranks with the whole body of Islamic tradition in the East and in the West. He's saying, no, the God of this book has a human body. He can be seen. But what I must highlight is that throughout his controversial and game-changing entry on Islam, he cites a primary source throughout his entry as the basis upon which he reached his conclusion. His most commonly cited source is this W. Wesley Williams figure. Well, what's the source? So you go to his bibliography of his text, and there he is, W. Wesley Williams, Tajali Rock Ruya, 2008, W. Wesley Williams, a 2009 article from Journal of American Oriental Society. He's quoting my dissertation. That's the W. Wesley Williams fellow. That was the leading source in helping Dr. Sinai reach his game-changing conclusion. I spent my academic career quoting the scholars. Now the scholars are quoting me. All praise belongs to Allah, who came in the person of Master God Muhammad. What I'm saying, dear family, what I'm saying is that we are shifting the paradigm. So now it's not the time for any of us to get weak in our faith. We winning. We winning. We ain't taking no more air. Those who are feeling 1975